Wuhan prepares to open up. Hi everyone, welcome back to another plain English lesson, this time number 252 on this Monday, April 20th, 2020. This is week number 6 for me in self-quarantine. Yikes. You can find the full lesson online at plainenglish.com/252. And coming up today, the city of Wuhan, China, is starting to lift restrictions on travel and daily life. What does life look like in the city where it all started? The expression we'll talk about in the second half of the program is pent up. So let's get started. 76 days. That's how long residents of Wuhan, China were in lockdown before the government began lifting restrictions about 2 weeks ago. The lockdown was harsh in Wuhan. Most people were not allowed to even leave their homes except to buy food or do essential tasks. Very few were allowed to leave the city. Train service was suspended, and main highways were closed and guarded. The government tracked the health of citizens through a smartphone app. Only people who had tested negative got the green code that let them go outside. Life is not exactly back to normal, but the harshest restrictions are being lifted. People are allowed to go outside. Highways reopened and train service started again. Residents could drive their own cars and go outside. Some people are going back to work. Wuhan is home to a lot of heavy industry, including auto manufacturing. Many of the biggest factories have started up again, though some of the smaller and medium-sized businesses are not yet up and running. Wuhan residents approached newfound freedom with caution. Many employers asked people not to take public transit to work, encouraging employees to either drive or walk. People still had to pass temperature checks to go inside public buildings. Restrictions were not lifted uniformly. Different neighborhoods had different rules according to a patchwork of local regulations. Residents are busy satisfying pent-up demand for a range of goods and services. There was a spike in demand for weddings as well as for train tickets. Wuhan residents streamed out of the city as soon as they were able. Roadways opened up at midnight on April 8th. In the early dawn hours, about 65,000 people left the city by car, bus, or train. Many people were satisfying their desires to travel to see friends and family. The first passenger flight to leave Wuhan was bound for Sanya, a destination known for its beaches. But others had been stuck in Wuhan, victims of circumstance. They had been stranded away from home this whole time. The crisis broke out during the Lunar New Year, so many people had been visiting family in Wuhan only to find that they couldn't go back home. All is not yet clear for those stranded travelers leaving Wuhan. Several cities, including Shenzhen and Guangzhou, will require travelers from Wuhan to self-quarantine to make sure they don't bring the virus with them to those other cities. Beijing required Wuhan residents to get a permit before booking an inbound train. Many of those who did travel doubled up on face masks and wore hazmat suits as they boarded trains and buses. Flight attendants wore goggles. Wuhan has seen new cases slow to a trickle. It even had one day without any new cases of the coronavirus. Many of the new cases in China are the result of infections from abroad, the Chinese government said. One challenge China will face is keeping the disease from making a resurgence, especially from imported cases from other countries. An outbreak in a Western city, thought to be brought into the country from Russia, was a reminder that different regions of the world are at different stages of this crisis. China started to loosen restrictions on daily life just as countries like Japan and India were implementing them. Other countries in between, like Italy, Spain, and the United States, appeared to be turning a corner, but were still weeks away from even contemplating opening up again. Early signs are that China will loosen travel restrictions from within its own borders, but will continue to apply heavy scrutiny to anyone coming into the country from abroad. The people of Wuhan have borne a unique psychological burden during these last few months. Their city is now synonymous with a virus that has infected over 2 million people and killed over 100,000. Today, Wuhan residents are seen as heroes for having lived through the strictest lockdown in the country. A popular slogan in Chinese is meant to be encouraging toward those in Wuhan. But it wasn't always that way. Residents from Wuhan who were stranded away from home when the outbreak began faced a stigma inside and outside China, often being refused service in hotels and told to go to relief stations, glorified refugee shelters. Their mission now is to try, as much as possible, to reclaim their city's reputation for cherry blossom trees and industrial strength rather than for this year's pandemic. The live events we've been doing are a lot of fun. I've corresponded with so many of you over the years by email, and now it's nice to see your faces and hear your voices on live calls. It's great to open up the call, see the names on the participant list, and recognize some of you from our email correspondence. We've done a few styles of calls lately. One style has been more of a relaxed conversation style call. The other has been a little more formal, where I go through some slides on how to talk about a certain topic. The formats are a little different, but both are fun, and people have really liked them. The best way to know about these events is to join our email list at plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L. From there, we send out emails when we are going to have calls in your time zone. So get on that list and we'll invite you to a future live call with JR and me. That's plainenglish.com/mail, MAIL. Today's expression is pent up. It looks like a phrasal verb, but I don't believe it is one. Pent up acts like an adjective, and it means not released or confined. It's very common to use the expression with the word demand. In economic terms, demand refers to people's desires and ability to buy something, even their intention to buy something. Pent-up demand is a phenomenon where people want to buy something and they have the money to do so, but for some reason they can't do it. Once that one reason changes, there will be a flood of demand as everyone tries to buy something all at once. Travel restrictions were lifted in Wuhan, and immediately airlines, trains, and buses had to deal with the pent-up demand for travel. After 76 days without being able to leave for almost any reason, people had accumulated a long list of travel destinations on their to-do lists. Some was vacation, sure, but a lot of trips people wanted to take were to check on elderly relatives, to return to work, etc. They had the desire and the money to take those trips, but they couldn't because of the travel restrictions. They had all this desire that was unreleased. It was building up more and more each day. That accumulated desire to travel is what we call pent-up demand. Car buying is one good example. Every month, people buy new cars. They need to replace their old ones. Their families are growing. Whatever the reason, people buy new cars every month. But not these months. Dealerships are closed and people are not in a car buying mood. But eventually, all those people who would have bought cars in February, who would have bought cars in March, who would have bought cars in April, all those people are going to go out and start shopping for cars in June, July, whenever the restrictions are lifted. Some people say there might be pent-up demand for bigger TVs. A lot of families might have realized that it's easier and more convenient to stay at home and watch movies instead of going to the theater. And big TVs are getting cheaper every day, so there might be growing and unsatisfied demand for large TVs. It could be that pent-up demand for better home entertainment is building during this lockdown. I'll give you a few other things that can be pent up. Number one, energy. This happens to adults too, but I would use pent-up energy more often to describe kids or pets. What happens if you don't take your dog out for a walk for a few days? If you're a dog owner, the image you have in your mind is pent-up energy. If you take your dog out to the park and let him run off leash after a long, rainy week stuck inside, Your dog is grateful for the opportunity to release some of that pent-up energy, the desire to go out and run around and play. It's been building up, and he just couldn't release it. Then you finally take him out for a long run, and he runs around like a crazy person. Pent-up energy can affect kids too. So that's pent-up energy. What about pent-up frustration? Can you imagine what that is? If you're frustrated with something, with work, with a friend, with family, with your partner, if you don't talk it over, if you keep it inside, what happens? It gets worse and worse and worse. It builds and builds until finally you need to release your pent-up frustration. Maybe it's a big fight. Maybe you just release it all at once. Maybe you put on your boxing gloves and go to the gym and release your pent-up frustration or anger that way. It's not good to let anger or frustration build inside of you, because one day you'll need to release all those pent-up feelings. Do you think there might be pent-up demand for going to the movies? The movie theater chains are saying there is. They're saying that after the social distancing rules are relaxed, you'll see people want to go out to the movies because they haven't been able to do so these last few weeks. I'm not so sure. I think maybe people have gotten their fill of movies and TV shows if they've got streaming at home. I don't think there will be quite as much pent-up demand as some movie theater chains are hoping. The first wealth is health. That is the quote of the week, and it's by the poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, who recognized that good health is the foundation of prosperity. That's true for individuals. It's also true for societies. And hopefully, after this crisis dies down, we will all recognize that good health for everyone is a baseline requirement for being a prosperous society. The first wealth is health. Ralph Waldo Emerson is our quote of the week. That brings us to the end of lesson 252 of Plain English. It's great to have you with us as always. And remember that you can see the video lesson and flashcards and all the other episode resources at plainenglish.com/252. Special thanks to all of you who have joined us for a live video call. If you'd like to meet JR and me face-to-face on a video call, then come join our email list at plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L, and we'll send you the dates and times for a future live call. They're all free, don't worry. We've enjoyed doing this during the last month or so of the lockdown, and we'll continue to post new events. So come join us at plainenglish.com/mail.